Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Big Sky Now podcast. I'm your host, Josh Amick, with my panel, as always, Fritz, John, Mark, and Ian. It's finally here, folks. We have reached the FCS Championship game. Montana State is representing the Big Sky Now podcast well, going against North Dakota State. And these teams, believe it or not, do have quite a bit of history together over the last couple of years, a lot of familiarity with each other. So we're going to try to do our best to break down this matchup and some key opponents to it. So let's get into it. The Bobcats continue their winning streak and punched their ticket to Frisco a couple weeks ago with their win over South Dakota. This year, are they going to get their job done to win their first national championship to 1984? They've been the number one ranked team in the FCS for a while. They haven't lost a game. Is this the year that they finally break that streak, John? Or is North Dakota State have a lot to say in that matter?
I think this is going to be an absolute battle of a game. It's a rematch of 2021's national championship game where North Dakota State came out and Tommy Mellott got hurt as a freshman on the first series. Then North Dakota State jumped out 35-0 and it was over, before it started, it felt like. It's in my opinion, this is all going to come down to how the game starts. Montana State's gotten out to some great starts here in the playoffs, and back when they played Montana also, their defense has come onto the field with a 7-0 lead, it felt like, in every game. So you need to take advantage of that early on. And if I'm North Dakota State, maybe taking the ball to start the game, try to establish your offense. The defense for the Bison needs to contain a lot in the backfield, keep spies on him, don't let him roll out as much, try to get some pressure, in my opinion, and just force him to get rid of the ball when he is passing it. But you got to be careful with the run game because they've got Scott Trey Humphrey and Adam Jones. So there's a lot to stop with Montana State. They're just an all-around great team. And then as for the Bobcat defense, you got to get out there. You got to shut down Bryce Lance. You got to stop a dual threat quarterback in Cam Miller, very similar to how Tommy Mellott plays. So it's just going to be a battle between both sides, and I think it's going to be a lot like how it was last year when they met in Bozeman.
Yeah, I think I don't know if the right word is MSU is overdue because they haven't been a consistent winner since 1984. In fact, I hate to admit my age, but I was in college in 1984, and in 1983 they weren't very good, and in 1985 they were terrible, and in 1984 they caught a wave and Kelly Bradley, and they had a bunch of Montana kids that were really good on defense, like Rob Fellows out of Showdown, and they just really caught fire. They lost two league games, but got in the playoffs and just started beating everybody. And I think the semifinal they had like a 98-yard INT return that put them in the lead late in the game against Rhode Island. And then it's been some lean years. After that they lost 17 straight to the Grizz, and then they've slowly been building back to the point where once they stop that streak, I think they're a game over 500 against the Grizz, and these last four seasons under, and probably adding some credit to Jeff Schodt and the job he did, beating the Grizz 4 straight times. And then he leaves, and then Vegan comes in these last 4 years, and he's just been building up and building up. And Mellott started in the playoffs in 2021, and it was kind of a surprise that they got to that title game, and then they got beat pretty good. But Mellott's done nothing but get better since then, and I think it's going to happen for him. I think they're 15-0 and they're playing great football, and I just think it's going to happen for him.
Yeah, I mean, Montana State may never have a better chance to win a national title
right
this year. I mean, they have a generational quarterback, at least at the FCS level, in Tommy Mellott. There aren't a lot of those guys, out there. They have depth at running back, even though some of those guys are nicked up a little bit. The ones that are playing, either any of them would start on a lot of other teams. Their defense is experienced, a guy like Brody Grebe and stuff like that. So they kind of have everything you need. The weird thing, this also might, we don't know. This might be the last game that Brent Vegan coaches at Montana State. I mean, we're hearing stuff over here about him talking to WSU about their opening, and maybe Fritz can speak to that a little bit if there was any murmurs over in Bozeman, Saturday when that was happening. But I think, it's all set up. This is the team. This is their best shot to win it for a while.
Yeah, Mark just mentioned it, and we've talked about it pretty much all year. When you look at Montana State, I don't really see a lot of weaknesses with this team. I know we've had several podcast topics where we talk about how do you even approach about trying to stop them when you play them on the field. But I mean, just what a treat this game is. A number one versus number two seed. It's going to be really close. I know I'm looking forward to it. They're two very well matched teams. They like to do some of the same things in terms of the dual threat quarterbacks. I certainly think Montana State has a very fair shot to win this game and break that drought of national championships.
I want to dive a little bit deeper into this game, though, as some of the panel has mentioned that these teams have played each other recently, as well as last year they played in the second round, and then that 2021 championship game where Mellott was just a freshman. Mellott has been here for both of those games. He has obviously improved a lot, has changed a lot. But what else in these matchups have changed? And can you even learn from those matchups, or do the teams just change so much over the years that you just have to go into this with a clean slate? Or do you think you can still learn from some of those matchups in the past, Fritz?
Well, when you look back at last year and they losing to NDSU, the Bobcats losing to NDSU in the second round, they missed a PAT in overtime, and that was a difference, 35-34. Their special teams were nails on Saturday. Their punter kept flipping the field when they weren't bothering to get any first downs the last, 18, 20 minutes of the game. And he just kept pounding the ball up in the air and down to the other end of the field, Brendan Hall. And they're just good, really good on all three levels. I thought the first 3 years under Vegan, they weren't very good on special teams and showed up twice against the Bobcats. And now they're with Taco Dowler in return and Brendan Hall and Sanstead booting through field goals. They're just they're good at all three levels. I wish I hadn't lost their top tackler, that linebacker. But McCade O'Reilly's been really good, been more than adequate playing the middle and playing the Mike linebacker. And, that's the biggest change I see. Any issue is going to always be an issue. Cam Miller's a great player. I liked how Vegan said, I don't know how you find somebody who's had more impact than Tommy Mellott, but I guess we'll find out in 2 weeks. So that'll be the big key, I think, is who's the real Walter Payton Award winner. It'll be those two on January 6th.
Yeah, I guess the big thing about this year is Mellott's healthy. I think he played every game this season, played 9 games last year, 12 out of 14 in 2022. So injuries have been an issue. We talked about earlier in this one and maybe in the last episode, he got hurt in the national title game on the first series in 2021. So, and like Fritz mentioned, their kicking game is better. I mean, that would have to be very disappointing to lose a game because you can't kick an extra point, and so, and they have more depth at running back this year with Adam Jones and the other guys and stuff like that. So an experienced defense. So I think that's what's changed over the last few years. They're just a little more experienced, a little more healthy, and just a little deeper.
Yeah, I mentioned it in the last episode, but this NDSU team does like to pass the ball a little bit more. They're at about 225 passing yards per game compared to 198 last year. And when they played in 2021, they were at about 150 passing yards per game. So big sample size between those couple of years. But I mean, it just kind of shows how the team has changed since that span when they first met in that national championship in 2021. So I also said earlier, I think of them as a run first team, but now you got to respect the pass game a little more when it comes to them this season.
Great point. Great point.
Yeah, and with that 2021 team, with them, you always kind of think they have these big burly backs, just like South Dakota State. Also, you hand it off and you power it behind a big offensive line. And in 2021, they had Hunter Lepke, who got 3 touchdowns early on in the first half of that game. But then this year, you're looking at it, and that big, big name that it's not out of the backfield. It's Bryce Lance. So, then maybe that's why they're passing it a little more, is because they have that talent out wide this year. Not that they haven't had talent at receiver before, but that's just kind of where the the overwhelming presence is, and you've got that dual threat quarterback now with Cam Miller. Not that he was also there in 2021, so it's kind of interesting that 4 years on, it's the same quarterbacks that played in that game are playing again, but as seniors. So, but yeah, and I'd like to also just kind of thank Fritz for mentioning the special teams aspect of it. Anytime that you can force the other team to go the length of the field every time, we saw that last week. South Dakota kept getting stops, but they had to keep driving, majority of the field to get back into scoring position, and then the Bobcat defense steps up, makes a stop, turns them over on downs, forces a fumble, what be it, it all plays together, and so it's just all kind of keys that play together. So
speaking of the dual threat quarterbacks, I want us to put on our defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, coaching hat, whatever you want to call it, and break down what we think is the most important matchup in the game. Is it limiting the dual threat quarterbacks? Is it establishing the run? What can either of these teams do to expose the other team and get the job done to win the national title? What do you think, Mark?
I mean, they're so even. I mean, both teams can run the ball and they can also throw it. Both quarterbacks can run it and throw it, not like a certain FBS team that had a running quarterback that like SMU, you didn't want him throwing it because he kept throwing pick sixes. So these guys are very, really, can do both, and so it's not a liability if they have to pass or run it. They're not just solely runners, and hopefully they can complete a pass. So they're pretty even on that front. What I think we mentioned the last segment about North Dakota State slowing down South Dakota State's running game. That would be kind of concerning if Montana State couldn't run the ball much against North Dakota State, because Montana State can throw it, Mellott can throw it, but I think that their passing game obviously works better when it's kind of played off of the running game and stuff like that. So that would be something. And then the other kind of dirty little secret is, you think of Al Davis and his old saying, the quarterback must go down, he must go down hard. And so if one of those, if either of the teams gets a chance to knock the other guy out of the game, that changes the whole thing. So that would be kind of something to watch for. But other than that, this shapes up as a really even game.
Yeah, Mark just mentioned it a bit there. I think this is going to come down to the pass game for both teams. Whichever team can make a defensive play in the pass game. Just looking into NDSU a bit, I think they have 30 sacks this season. I think they've forced 25 takeaways. Sorry, I can't talk right now. I think it's gonna come down to a play like that. I think this is gonna be a very close back and forth game. If someone throws an interception, that might be the game changer in this one. I just talked about how NDSU's pass offense has really improved over the last couple of years. I think it's gonna be a key factor in this game.
yeah, I definitely feel like quarterback play is going to be a key thing, and what defense can stop that early on. I kind of mentioned it earlier with how Montana State started games. I think the scripted plays at the beginning, the first two drives, are going to be massive for this game. Which team can seize the momentum early? Which team can get a stop and maybe take the others out of their gameplay style? So I think that those two things are going to kind of contribute a lot to how this game goes. And yeah, if one of those defenses starts getting through and maybe applies a little pressure and can maybe wear down on the other team's quarterback, that could be a big factor.
Both quarterbacks are pretty evenly matched. I was really impressed in how accurate Cam Miller was throwing the ball. I was also impressed with the way Bauman last week was accurate. And South Dakota got the Bobcats, as Vegan mentioned, in a lot of one-on-one situations on the corners, on the boundary, and the Bobcats made the plays for the most part. And the two big plays they gave up were running plays in the first half. I think it's going to come down to that secondary really making some plays again against Trey Lance's little brother. Nobody's mentioned that yet. Bryce is his little brother.
I banned you guys from mentioning Trey Lance with the Niners being my team. So
you
I
almost made it.
Fritz.
The Niners fan almost
it's
made
still
it.
Too soon.
Yeah, still too soon.
Yeah.
That was a good draft pick. Anyway, no, I just think that it is going to come back to who has the more productive and game of quarterback, and if it's Tommy Mellott or Cam Miller who makes a game breaking play. It's been 2 weeks in a row for Tommy. He's just a player, and I think that's the main thing. The passing game, like Ian mentioned, is going to be, I think, critical. I think Bryce is better than anybody the Bobcats have, but I want to mention Rohan Jones will be 2 weeks healthier in a couple of weeks, and he could play a big role too.
This game is for the national championship. You don't need a whole lot of bulletin board material. Both of these teams are going to be ready. But as we mentioned, Cam Miller has been here since 2021. Same thing with Tommy Mellott. With the Bobcats losing the last couple of games to them, do you think that they're going to come out with looking for redemption or have a little bit of pep in their step, knowing the history between these two teams, Ian?
I'm sure they're going to say, no, it's just another game, anything like that. But I do think that it probably does sit in the back of your head that there are plenty of guys left who have faced them over the last couple of years. You mentioned Mellott, who started the game in 21 and last year as well. They remember that loss last year, the 1 point loss in overtime. And didn't they miss 2 field goals early in that game, too? If I remember correctly. I mean, that game probably shouldn't have gone to overtime. They probably feel like they did enough to win that game in regulation. I think that's something that's going to sit in the back of their heads. They're probably going to stay focused. Nope, just another one, whole different year. But it's tough to deal with those emotions as well, that stay in the back of your head.
Yeah, and of course, this isn't a conference game, but this is a regional rivalry. It seems like these teams are developing into somewhat rivals. They've met a lot in the playoffs recently. You can kind of say the same with both the Montana schools and the Dakota State schools. They seem to always find each other when it counts. So it's a big game to kind of establish, who's going to come out on top with that regard. The Big Sky and the Missouri Valley Football Conference are like the SEC and Big Ten of FCS football. That's a big battle. So the Big Sky wants to get a win. The Montana State wants to get redemption for last year. They want to come out there and show off better than 2021. So yeah, it's going to be just a big battle between the two teams. Yeah.
I think it's not so much 2021 that will stick with the Bobcats, but last year, the 35-34 loss.
Yep.
I think not just the state of Montana, but I think most FCS might be rooting for the Bobcats because Andy Issue's been there so many times and won so many crowns. It's like rooting against the Yankees, It's a nation divided. You're either for or against, and I think I think MSU's got a lot of juice behind it, and I think they have an axe to grind. I think it's notable that Brent Vigen cut his teeth coaching and playing, and then coaching in the NDSU system. And I think it's time for somebody else. And once again, I got to mention, green and gold should go together, but NDSU somehow doesn't make it work.
Fritz, yeah, I don't think either team's going to lack for motivation. I mean, Montana State, this is Tommy's last shot. I mean, might be as good a team as they'll ever have, and this could, like we talked about earlier, it could be Vigen's last game. We don't know that. So, and then North Dakota State, I mean, they're probably retired the last couple of years about seeing South Dakota State win these titles. I mean, they North Dakota State, when you've won 9 out of 11, 9 titles in 11 years, and your last title was all the way back in 2021. I mean, that almost constitutes a drought. I mean, most people would kill to have a drought that North Dakota State had. They lost in the title game in 22 and lost last year in the semifinals. So, I mean, they're motivated to kind of get back and put North Dakota State back on top where they think they should be, on the top of FBS or FCS.
We're going to move on now to my favorite portion of the show, when we give you our picks. Since this is the last game of the season, feel free to go into a little more detail on why you think it will happen. But I do want to give a shout out to all the picks that we had throughout the year. Fritz remained atop the leaderboard all year, finished with an 89-18 record, 9-3 in the playoffs. John was second with the 86-21 record, 10-2 in the playoffs. Ian third, 84-23, 8-4 record in the playoffs. Mark missed a few weeks, but he had a 78-19 record, so still a very high winning percentage, and only 1-1 in the playoffs as he rejoined us last week. And then myself, 81-26, so at the bottom of the barrel, but I am 10-2 in the playoffs, so I'm currently tied with John for the lead. So we'll see after this final game where it all ends up, but shout out to Fritz for having the most picks right throughout the year. So with that being said, John, since you are atop the leaderboard for the FCS playoffs, break down this final matchup and what we think will happen.
Picks, I'm guessing, and I think Montana State is going to get it done here. I think that this is going to be a back and forth battle. I think it's going to come down to the quarterback play, like we've mentioned, and the beginning of the game. ESU and SDSU met up last week, and I think Montana State gets it done in overtime.
So moving on to Fritz, the king of the leaderboard. What are your final thoughts?
Put an X in front of my name because I clinched right there.
You clinched a long time ago. I've been out. I've had an E next to my name since like week 4. So,
but now I get a full playoff share. So, I'll pick the Bobcats. I think it's I don't think it's going to come down to overtime. I think as John mentioned, they've had great starts, and not only have they had great starts, they've had a couple great finishes. They don't seem to have any weakness on offense or defense or special teams. I thought their pass defense was great last week. Maybe that was a bugaboo earlier. I thought, with the exception of Travis Tice, who did that to everybody, and they tackle people well all season. They're just, 1984 doesn't seem that long ago to me. I guess it was, but I think it's going to happen again for the Bobcats.
Three of us weren't born then, so it was a long time ago.
Right.
Hey, now I was out of college in '84, so that wasn't that long ago. So I'm gonna take Montana State in a close one. Maybe it's part prediction, part maybe rooting. Be nice to see the Big Sky finally win one again. I think it's been since Eastern Washington in 2010 that the Big Sky won a national title. So I think that Montana State's got we talked about it before. They got everything you need to win one. You have, you got a great quarterback, you got a running game, they can also throw it. They got experienced defense, and they can actually make their place kicks. I think they win a close one, and just for drama's sake, we'll say it comes down to Tommy Mellott making a Tommy Mellott play to either win the game or wrap it up for the Bobcats.
I like it. Ian, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, John stole my shine with the overtime prediction. So I'm also on Montana State. I don't know if that bodes well for them because all 4 of us have been on them so far to start, but we'll see. I'll go with 24-21 late field goal as time's expiring.
All right. Well, it's down to me. I could go the other way just so I can at least have a little bit of pride and clinch the playoff bracket. But this is the Big Sky Now podcast. I've had a great time hosting this all year. I'm sticking with the Bobcats. Maybe bad luck for them. Hopefully not, that we're all 5-0, but we're all rooting for Big Sky teams here. So we're hoping that the Bobcats get it done. I don't know if it'll be that close. I would like to see what the line is, but I think the Bobcats can win by a touchdown. I think they're that talented and they're that balanced, and can't wait for this game. But speaking of the game is on a Monday, which is usually when we record these podcasts, and later in the week on Wednesday. So our goal is to probably record the last episode of the Big Sky Now podcast after that game that week. We'll get more details to you when we have an exact date. But I want to thank my panel for being with us all year. We hope you have a great holiday and a great new year. So thank you to Fritz, John, Ian, and Mark for being with us. And we'll see you all next year breaking down the championship game, and hopefully the Bobcats pull this off. Until then, take care. Thank you.
At Van Law Firm in Kalispell, we're dedicated to providing expert and compassionate legal support to individuals and families in the Flathead Valley. With years of experience in criminal defense, personal injury, and estate planning, our team has a proven track record of achieving favorable outcomes for our clients. We understand that legal matters can be stressful, so So we prioritize clear communication and work closely with you every step of the way. Contact us today for a free consultation and let us put our experience to work for you. Visit vanlawfirm.com or call us at 406-826-6529.